I will now show you how to use for loops to access elements of an array and how to generate new arrays. So let's go ahead and save your previous VI in your H drive. Doesn't really matter what you call it. And let's create a new VI. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. So we've got the typical front panel and block diagram. So let's go to the front panel. I'm going to do this a little bit quicker now. So right click, go to array, place the array in the front panel. Now left add in a numeric control inside and expand the array with the little staircase mouse cursor. Now I'm going to modify the numbers inside the array. It doesn't really matter what numbers you place in, it's just something to just fill in the array so we can modify it inside the with the block diagram. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, it doesn't really matter what numbers you place in, just have something in there. So let's go to the block diagram. Now the first thing we're going to do is place down the for loop. So a for loop, you can access it by right clicking, go into structures and go to for loop. So do that, and you have to left click and drag to be able to place a for loop. So let me write that down. So right click, structures, for loop, click, left click and drag. So that means we've now placed the for loop inside the block diagram. Now, a for loop has two elements. One is n, that is the number of iterations, and I, which is the index. So this is a typical for I equal to 0 until whatever number big N in steps of 1. So let's go ahead and wire in an end to the for loop. So right click on the little circle as the input for the n and create a constant and write down 10. It doesn't really matter what element you wire in, and I will explain to you why in a second. We can now wire in our array and simply wire the output of the array into the for loop. So go ahead and do that. So left click on the little circle there and double click inside the for loop. Now you'll see that you have whenever the array goes into the loop, you will see a little square like this one. Now this is an auto index tunnel. What this means is that every iteration it will pick up each element of the array. So if you remember before, to access each element of the array we had to use the indexing array function, and then we had to select each element from there. So this is doing it automatically. So let's just make sure that this works. So now right click, create indicator. So now we've got each, let's call that element. Now I'm going to show you how to visualize how this works. So go ahead and click on the highlight execution. It's a little light bulb button on the top, so click that. And now when we run this array, you will see that each time you'll see which variables go into the element. So you can see that every iteration, we can run that again. Every iteration, every element from the array is going into element. And if we were monitoring the front panel, you'll see that it'll be changing every second or so, and that's simply taking each element of the array. Now this is the equivalent of using the indexing array function, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So right click, array, index array. So I'm just going to place that in there. So just remember, this is right click, array, index array. So place that in there. Now I want you to connect the output of the array to the input of the indexing array function. And now you'll see that this is giving us trouble because here we've got an array, but because we've indexed it, what we have is a single element. So if we want to send an array into a for loop, we have to go to the little square, select it by left clicking it, right click, and then go to disable indexing. So let me do that again. Left click on the little square, right click, disable indexing. So now you can see that it's a thick line, which means it's an array. Now, because we want to access each element of the array, we simply send in the I, because, oops, I will go from 0 to however many iterations we're doing. And again, we can use the output as an indicator. So create an indicator as the element. So element out, element 2, for instance. Now if we go to the front panel, you can see here are both variables. So let's run this, and you can see how each element is getting picked up. So one gets updated before the other one because things happen in a sequence. Anyway, so this is, you're simply accessing each element of the array. I will show you now how to generate an array with a for loop. So let's go ahead and place another for loop. So go to structures, for loop. So right click, structures, for loop, place it down. We're gonna generate an array with 100 elements in it. So I'm gonna create a constant, and I'm gonna put 101 because I want it to go from 0 to 100. And I want to generate an array which has a certain, so I want to automatically generate it. So let's say, for instance, we want to put in, make an array which goes from 0 to 50 in 0.5 steps. So let's go ahead and do that. So to do each step, we simply have to place down the step size. So let's place that down as a constant. So it'll be 0.5. And because I will take values from 0 to 100, all we have to do is multiply these two numbers. So go ahead and create, go to numeric and go to multiply. So that is right click, go to numeric, multiply, and place that on the front panel, on the block diagram, and wire in your I and the, okay, something to take into account now. The output of this is blue, so that's an integer. You don't want that. So to be able to get a double, it needs to look orange. So be careful with the color code, because if it was an integer, you wouldn't be able to go in 0.5 steps. It usually automatically picks up the data type that makes sense. So LabVIEW is smart in that way, but sometimes you won't do what you want it to do, and then you have to use the numeric conversion tools. So from here, if you needed a double, you could get it in case that happens. Okay, so now we've got this this function here. So let's generate an array. So if we take this output in outside of the loop, again you will see this icon again. And if we right click here and create an indicator, so just again right click here, create an indicator, you will see that when okay, so now go to the front panel. Here's the array we've just created. So right now it's blank because we have not run the program yet. So let's go ahead and run that. Because we've got highlighted execution on, this is going to take a long time to fill in the array, but just so you can see here what's going on, each loop will send the different elements into this little function here, and it will collect them all at the end and place them into the array. So I'm gonna disable the highlighted execution because I want to speed this up. Now if we go back to the array, you will see that when I extend that, it's full of the numbers that we want. So now this is where changing the index is handy. So we remember we entered 101 elements. So if I now place here element 100, it's the last element, which is 50, which is what I expected. So again, we can just change the index to fill in whatever, just to see the elements of the array.